Not every sale happens at the register. Before AT&T Business Wireless, checking out customers on our mobile POS systems took too long. Basically a staring contest where everyone loses. It's crazy what people will say during an awkward silence. Now transactions are done before the silence takes hold. That means I can focus on the task at hand and make an extra sale or two. Sometimes I do miss the bonding time. Sometimes.
AT&T Business Wireless. Connecting changes everything.
Ever notice how life's best stories don't happen in your living room? They happen on the open road, out on the water, or parked under the stars. At Progressive, they get that you want to focus on the experience, not worry about the what-ifs. That's why they offer quality insurance designed for your ride, whether that's a boat, RV, or motorcycle. Adventure with confidence. Visit Progressive.com and see how easy it is to protect your favorite way to get away. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in D.C. Prices vary based on how you buy.
It's Saturday 13th of June, I'm Jamie East, and this was a week that saw the online far-right stir up more violence, escalation and confusion in the Middle East, new proposals to protect teens from explicit images, and tributes to a much-loved British star.
Grab a cup of something hot, put up your feet, and get up to speed on the 7 biggest stories of the week. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7.
It's news,
but not the news.
The last fortnight has seen incidents of public disorder sparked by far-right online commentators like Tommy Robinson, who have been using isolated cases to stir up unrest and to make the case that the UK has what they call two-tier policing. Prime Minister Keir Starmer had criticised both Elon Musk and Nigel Farage last week for their remarks on the death of student Henry Nowak and rejected the notion of any bias in UK policing. But on Sunday, Tory Shadow Equalities Minister Claire Coutinho was continuing to make the case.
Across these public services where people have very difficult jobs, the fear of being seen to be anti-racist is actually now being put above protecting the public in those very difficult circumstances.
Justice Secretary and Deputy PM David Lammy revealed he had spoken to US Vice President J.D. Vance about the Nowak case after the VP posted on X that Nowak would still be alive if European elites had stood their ground against the mass invasion of migrants. He says he told Vance that his commentary was wrong and not helpful.
No, I don't recognise two-tier policing across our country. I just don't think that that is the starting point for police officers up and down the country. That is not my experience.
That wasn't the end of the matter, though, as the far right seized on a new incident in Belfast on Monday to start a fresh round of disturbances. A Sudanese man was charged with attempted murder on Tuesday night after a brutal attack in Belfast that left a man in a serious condition in hospital. The attack, which took place on Monday, was filmed by bystanders, and the clip has been circulating online and shared by far-right influencers including Tommy Robinson and Elon Musk in a bid to spark protests over immigration. Tuesday night saw cars, a bus and even homes set alight as the protests turned violent, and former First Minister Baroness Foster was blaming those who encouraged violence across the province.
The people that are causing this violence and moving the protest from a peaceful protest to a violent protest have a lot of responsibility on their shoulders.
Her calls for calm were echoed across the political spectrum, with Northern Ireland Secretary Hilary Benn speaking in the Commons and making a point of praising the intervention of bystanders who helped to save the man's life.
Amidst the horror of what happened, when confronted with scenes of terrifying violence, members of the public did not walk on by. Instead, a number of them stepped forward. They intervened to pull the assailant away and protect the victim.
Wednesday night saw more disturbances in Belfast, despite requests for calm from the family of the man who was attacked on Monday. Stephen Ogilvie remains in hospital with serious injuries, while a Sudanese man appeared in court on Wednesday charged with attempted murder. The initial protests on Tuesday saw 27 people left homeless and were condemned by Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
The acts of violence and arson are totally unjustified. We are united in calling for calm and determined to restore order and ensure that justice is done.
Wednesday night saw lower levels of violence and a higher police presence as politicians across the spectrum in Northern Ireland condemned the riots and the racial targeting that was part of it. Claire Hanna, the leader of the SDLP, says that it's unacceptable that far-right influencers are allowed to cause so much chaos.
For all the online agitators who stoke this stuff up, when they move on to their next target, we'll be the ones left to pick up the pieces. There has been mob justice and some of the same old, same old proposals for a hardened border on the island of Ireland.
Thursday night saw more protests in Northern Ireland, but in contrast to the previous days, these were mostly peaceful. The violent scenes and deliberate targeting of immigrants and racial groups has shocked the nation, and First Minister Michelle O'Neill called out the protesters on Thursday.
The issue that we saw over the course of the last number of nights has been pure racism, and we say very clearly no to racism in our society. The vast majority of people here are good and welcoming and inclusive and value those people that work right across all of our sectors.
The Royal College of Nursing was amongst the organisations calling for an end to violence as care workers and nursing staff were targeted by masked men asking for ID from people on their way to work. It's another example of how far-right influencers on social media platforms like X appear to be able to drive violence in communities on the back of isolated incidents like Monday's knife attack. Northern Ireland Secretary Hilary Benn says the platforms will have to face consequences.
Social media companies have a very heavy responsibility. It's why we're going to bring forward new powers to make it clear that social media companies need to take down illegal content.
It's been another chaotic week in the Middle East, which began last Sunday night when Iran launched missiles at Israel after Israel launched an airstrike on the southern suburbs of Beirut. The strike marked a serious escalation in the tension in the region and came after Israel and Lebanon had agreed a fresh ceasefire, which Hezbollah rejected. Donald Trump appeared unconcerned on Sunday evening, telling a journalist that Iran had shot their missiles. Now get back to the table. But despite that, Israel launched retaliatory strikes. It followed a bad-tempered interview with Meet the Press on Sunday, which eventually saw Trump storm off after an angry exchange about rigged elections. He also said that he never promised there would be no more wars.
First of all, I didn't guarantee no war. Why would I have built the strongest military in the world? I built our military. I inherited a terrible military. I didn't want to use this. But I'm doing you and everybody else a big favour.
Meanwhile, Israel continues to take territory in Gaza, despite a theoretical ceasefire there, but Prime Minister Netanyahu was unapologetic.
In the Gaza Strip, we are striking Hamas from every direction. We currently control more than 60% of the territory of the Strip. Soon we will reach 70%.
On Monday, the Middle East appeared to have stepped back from the brink of a resumption of all-out war. After 15 hours of strikes exchanged between Iran and Israel, both sides agreed to hold their fire after urging from US President Trump. Meanwhile, the topic of Iran's enriched uranium was back on the agenda as the boss of the UN's International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, said it's time for Tehran to re-engage with him and that inspections need to resume.
We seem to be in the midst of a complicated phase, but we've seen this before. And we've also seen moments where things tend to cool down a bit. And the important thing is this dialogue, which has been essentially broken.
Tensions stepped up again, however, as the US carried out a series of strikes on Iranian targets as what it called a proportionate response to the downing of a US Apache helicopter on Tuesday. It appears the helicopter was downed by an Iranian drone and the 2 airmen on board were rescued, but it is not clear what this will mean for the stalled peace talks, with Iran launching strikes in response at a US airbase in Jordan. Israel also launched strikes in Lebanon and issued evacuation orders for the whole city of Tyre, the second largest in the territory. It came just days after a supposed ceasefire, and Israeli forces also continue to push into Gaza, taking more territory. Democratic Senator Bernie Sanders says it's come to the point where there's no choice about how to describe Israel's behaviour.
And I think what happened in Gaza is, in fact, and I say this reluctantly, is genocide. The suffering of the Palestinian people exists today. Is a disaster.
The impact of Donald Trump's war on Iran on America's economy became clearer on Wednesday as US inflation spiked sharply, driven by rising energy costs. Inflation jumped to 4.2%, which will put new Fed Chairman Kevin Warsh in a difficult position as President Trump continues to push for interest rate cuts. Trump himself professed to love inflation in an Oval Office media session and claimed that the US has been liberating oil from Iran, a claim which doesn't appear to make much sense. The president was also back to both threatening Iran and promising a deal.
All of their leadership is gone, so they replaced it. All of that leadership is gone, so they replaced it. And that's the people we're dealing with now. And I think they're going to want to make a deal, but we're going to find out.
There were further strikes exchanged between the US and Iran early on Thursday morning, with Secretary of War Pete Hegseth announcing the strikes in advance, claiming they were because Iran had taken too long to make a peace deal. With both sides exchanging fire, it's not clear how a deal could be close, but Vice President J.D. Vance was at least making a more coherent case.
Right now, I feel that we are in a position to get a deal that is good for the United States economically and that really does deal with the Iranian nuclear program, not just now, but for the long term.
Even by Donald Trump's recent standards, Thursday was a strange day. He began by cheering on a second round of strikes on Iranian targets and threatened more strikes, and even proposed that the US should capture Karg Island, Iran's primary oil hub. Financial markets flinched and oil prices rose. As it looked as though a full-scale war might resume, however, there was a sudden change of heart from the president during the afternoon. He cancelled the proposed strikes and at an Oval Office event even suggested that there might be a signing of a peace deal in Europe this weekend with Vice President J.D. Vance. It's increasingly hard to know what the truth is, but Trump did, of course, continue to talk up the US military's success in Operation Epic Fury.
We can walk in there tomorrow if I wanted to. We could put a small group of soldiers and take over the whole place. They're finished, and the media is crooked.
Last weekend saw a new report from Britain's First Sea Lord, which found that the Royal Navy is now spending a significant amount of its time and resources on threats from Russia. General Sir Gwyn Jenkins says Russia's navy poses a direct threat to the UK's security, and he has warned that the danger underneath the surface is growing, persistent and sophisticated. Defence analyst and former Defence Minister Tobias Ellwood says the government's slow rollout of the new defence plan is putting the UK's security at risk.
I'll be blunt, there are comparisons with 1937 now. War is heading our way. The First Sea Lord said today that the Navy is now spending 1/3 of its time responding to Russian undersea threats. So delays in upgrading our UK defence is now putting the country in danger.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer faced a new political crisis on Thursday, and it came from an unexpected source. In a matter of hours, both Defence Secretary John Healey and Armed Forces Minister Al Khan's quit in a bitter dispute over the funding of the long-awaited Defence Investment Plan. Healey, who has been loyal and consistent in his role, felt that the increase offered for the defence budget created an impossible situation, with commitments to NATO, support for Ukraine and arrangements like the AUKUS submarine programme, all requiring far more than the £2 billion on the table. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson was both paying tribute to Healey and backing the budget.
I'm really sorry that he's left government and he's made that decision. I do know, however, that we are investing record amounts into defence, the biggest uplift in funding since the Cold War, alongside big investment in schemes and programmes and initiatives that will protect our country and keep us safe for many years into the future.
Dan Jarvis, the Security Minister, has been named as Healey's replacement, but with a NATO summit next month in Ankara, the PM could face some serious questions from NATO and Donald Trump about commitments to spend 3% of GDP on defence. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch was quick to claim credit.
John Healey has done the honourable thing. I raised the issue of the Defence Investment Plan, and the Prime Minister exposed the fact that he was not going to put money into defence to the amount that was required. And I'm sure John Healey sat there listening to the Prime Minister tell me that he was increasing defence funding when he is not.
Ukrainian President Zelensky met with King Charles on Monday at Buckingham Palace and plans to invite him for a state visit to Ukraine later this year. It was as a mark of respect for the King's intervention on Ukraine's behalf with US President Donald Trump, and Zelensky was being very positive after Sunday's tripartite meeting with Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron and Friedrich Merz at Downing Street. He says the message is that Ukraine is winning the battle on the ground, but was keen to suggest that the proceeds of Roman Abramovich's sale of Chelsea could be put to good use buying air defence systems for Ukraine. He was keen too to emphasise that technology is one of the reasons that Ukraine may be gaining the upper hand on the front lines.
Even on the front line we have it. Moscow, they don't use social media in the center of their capital. We can use it in the battlefield. Nobody stopped our soldiers. They can do it.
The Ukrainian president headed to Estonia on Tuesday to meet with leaders of the Nordic and Baltic countries at a regional summit. He apologised to the leaders of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, all of whom have seen rogue Ukrainian drones cross their borders recently. He blamed Russian electronic warfare for interfering with the drones' guidance systems. He was also continuing his positive messaging about Ukraine's progress in the war with Russia, emphasising that this is the moment to apply more pressure to Vladimir Putin as progress on the front line stalls. He was also keen to offer Ukraine's expertise in drone warfare.
As one partner said today during our meeting, Europe cannot protect itself without Ukraine, and I thank all partners
for acknowledging that.
Tuesday also saw the EU launch a new round of sanctions on Russia. This is the 21st set since the war began just over 4 years ago. The new round, introduced by EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, will target Russian crypto and oil and has a specific ban on Russian military personnel.
We focus on the sectors with the highest impact, that is energy, trade, and this time it includes for the very first time fisheries. And we are banning the entry of former Russian combatants into the European Union.
Canada found itself caught in the crossfire between Russia and Ukraine on Wednesday. It comes 2 weeks after Ukraine and Canada signed an agreement that will see Ukrainian drones produced in Canada as part of a larger deal which will see Ukrainian expertise made available to Canada's military. Ukraine continues to demonstrate the effectiveness of its long-range drones with a fresh strike on a military base 900 kilometres from the front line in the city of Cheboksary on Wednesday. The development agreement annoyed the Kremlin, with Russia labelling Canada a warmonger, with Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova warning that there would be potentially severe consequences for Canada's decision.
We reserve the right to an adequate response and will take these new circumstances into account in our military political planning, and we will definitely post the addresses of all these production facilities in Canada.
With the UK in the middle of a new crisis over defence spending, it casts doubt on how much support Ukraine can expect from Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Only last Sunday, Starmer, Macron and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz met with Ukrainian President Zelensky at Downing Street with promises of long-term support and funding as they look to apply pressure to Russia. The German Chancellor addressed the Bundestag on Thursday, promising long-term support for Ukraine and demanding that any future peace talks between Russia and Ukraine include not just the US but also Europe. Deputies from Germany's far-right AfD party interrupted his speech, laughing and shouting disapproval and highlighting the tension in German politics.
Our goal for Ukraine remains a just and lasting peace that also takes our security interests into account. That is why we support Ukraine.
Still to come on the Standout 7 in association with Metro, Pink rocks the Tony Awards and tributes to a Buffy star. Right after this.
Unlock the savings at Boost Mobile and save up to $600 a year. I've been scouting these big carriers for a minute now, and I've seen them pull the same play 1,000 times. They promise you the world, then hit you with a price hike right when the game gets tight. But Boost Mobile, their $25 a month unlimited wireless plan is the most consistent player on the floor. No contracts and no price hikes. Unlock the savings today at boostmobile.com/unlock. Based on average annual single line payment of AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile customers compared to 12 months of the Boost Mobile unlimited wireless plan as of January 2026. For full offer details, visit boostmobile.com.
Quick question. When was the last time a display ad changed your mind? Now think about the last time a friend told you about something they loved. Different feeling, right? That's how podcast advertising works. A host who's built real trust with their audience talks about your brand in their own words, in their own voice. It doesn't interrupt the experience. It's part of it. With Acast, you can access the world's largest podcast marketplace. Choose the right shows, the right audiences, the right format. Then watch the data tell you it worked. You're not buying impressions. You're buying influence. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.
Welcome back.
The government has been considering the more than 80,000 submissions from a public consultation on a social media ban for teens. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has promised to act quickly once the evidence has been considered, and last Sunday saw the Times newspaper report that the PM is due to make a speech in the next week or so, which will see a ban put into place. The measures are expected to include detailed age recommendations and bans on things like endless scrolling. Former Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips told Times Radio it's a matter of urgency.
I am very much in favour of a social media ban, and also if I look at the data around the growing number of teenagers who are perpetrating sexual violence, what is it that's happened in our society that makes that the case?
And while Phillips may have stepped down as Safeguarding Minister, one of the initiatives that she spent 18 months working on may finally be coming to fruition. She's been a passionate advocate of adding software that will bar explicit pictures on children's phones, but says that it was a never-ending battle to get big tech to take any action. Monday saw the Prime Minister give the tech companies a firm deadline of September to initiate the blocking software and protect children from explicit images.
I'm calling on tech companies operating in this country to introduce device controls that prevent children from sending and receiving sexually explicit images. because this is not an impossible challenge.
Starmer was speaking at London Tech Week, and he says that if the companies meet the deadline, the UK could be the first country in the world to offer this kind of protection. Catherine Atkinson, who is the Victims Minister, said that it's not an optional issue or just a suggestion, that the government will take action.
There will be sanctions to ensure that they do, and we've seen in many other areas with the Online Safety Act there are very significant fines, but there is also the possibility there of criminal sanctions.
Early Monday morning, our time saw the 79th Annual Tony Awards. Pink was chosen as the host, which ruffled some feathers as she's never made a Broadway appearance, but she delivered a full-on performance that won over the doubters. British actress Leslie Manville won a Tony for her performance in Oedipus, while there was disappointment for Daniel Radcliffe, who lost out to John Lithgow. In fairness, Lithgow made history as the oldest winner of a Tony Award, and he pointed out in his speech that it's been 5 decades since he won his last one. He didn't seem too worried, though, as it turns out he has plenty of trophies at home.
This will sound crazy, but there are too many to put on display. At a certain point, it becomes cocky. I have 7 Emmy Awards now. 6 of them are doorstops on the 2nd floor of our LA house.
The death was announced last Friday of English actor Anthony Head. He was 72 years of age and died peacefully at home after complications from pneumonia, according to his 2 adult daughters, Emily and Daisy. Anthony was originally a star of musical theatre, but became famous in the UK partly for his 6-year role in Nescafe Gold Blend ads, which became hugely popular. He played English teacher Rupert Giles in the show Buffy the Vampire Slayer for 6 seasons, and also starred in Little Britain and lately in Ted Lasso. He also became internet famous as he was pictured in full regal garb on the set of Merlin playing his beloved pink Nintendo DS. The fame and recognition from his role in Buffy was something he always appreciated. Rest in peace, Anthony.
It's rare to get a show where you can see in the writing that it has a real human touch. And the thing that's best about it is the fact that it's not any one age group. It spans. It's great, and you get all sorts of people coming up and say, just, I love this show. It's like, that's refreshing.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes and we'll give you the world.
When everything is moving all at once, your workforce, your tech stack, your business, you don't need more tools. You need one solution. That's why Paylocity built a single platform to connect HR, finance, and IT with AI-driven insights and automated workflows that simplify the complex and power what's next. Because when everything comes together in one place, growth comes easy. Experience one place for all your HCM needs. Start now at Paylocity.com/one.
You're locked into a lot of things you can't change. Weather, traffic. Hey, stay in your lane. Your wireless carrier's latest price hike. But you can unlock a better way. Unlock the savings at Boost Mobile and save up to $600 a year. Switch to the $25 a month unlimited wireless plan. No contracts, no price hikes, and you keep your phone. Stop being locked into their games. Unlock the savings at boostmobile.com/unlock. Based on average annual single line of payment of AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile customers compared to 12 months on the Boost Mobile unlimited wireless plan as of January 2026. For full offer details, visit boostmobile.com.